Welcome to Distressed to Joyful, Bailey's Way. I'm your host, Bailey Raber, here to enlighten you and the rest of the world about one of the most misunderstood mental disorders out there, bipolar disorder. Each week, we're going to learn more about my personal journey with the disorder while leaving you enriched with new information on how you can help better yourself as well as those around you. Hello, friends! Apologies on being a little MIA. I took a much-needed vacation to the desert, aka Arizona, and I went with an old pal from high school, and we hiked to the Grand Canyon, and it was my first time ever being in the state of Arizona, also the Grand Canyon. Guys, it was amazing. Let me just tell you. First of all, if you come from anywhere that's humid, like, South Texas, then getting away from humidity was actually super refreshing. While I did sweat a ton on our hike, of course, that's expected. For the most part, I didn't really sweat while we were in Arizona, and it was really kind of nice. It was actually so nice because I'm a sweater. I sweat a lot. So to not sweat very much was like, wow, this is cool. Also, just being in a new place and talking to strangers and experiencing new things again was just so amazing, y'all. I cannot tell you enough how important it is to travel for our mental health. I'm dead set. I'm always going to be a big believer in that. You need to get out. You need to see the world from a different perspective. You need to see how it is for other people to live, and it really will open your eyes to the world around you and help you to understand people just a little bit better. So I'm a firm believer in traveling, and I think everybody should. And since America is starting to get a little bit better with the vaccinations, I think 50% of the population has been vaccinated. Honestly, flying on airplanes doesn't freak me out at all. Everybody has to wear masks still. And if you go somewhere and do some hiking or outdoorsy stuff, you're not really around a bunch of other people, and you don't really have to worry about masks and crowding that much. If you go hike 3.5 miles down into the Grand Canyon where literally nobody else is. I will tell you though, that it was a really cool, but sometimes an eerie experience because it was just me and my friend Maddie out there. And at some point, we would sometimes see a couple of hikers here and there, because apparently the trail we went on, Hermit's Trail, was one of the most difficult ones of the entire Grand Canyon, which this was on the South Rim, if any of you guys are Grand Canyoners or have been there before or whatever. But it was a difficult trail, I will tell you that, because we went down a total of 2,100 feet. So that's a pretty steep incline. But when we got to a certain point, literally we saw nobody else for a couple miles. And it was cool. It was so cool because both of us were like, wow, it is so quiet out here. It is so peaceful. There's no other human beings. This is great. But at the same time, it got a little eerie because we did run into some, I think they were elk or they were deers. I don't know. They had fuzzy antlers when we got to the end of where we were going to turn around for our hike. And that was a little creepy because I didn't know what kind of animals these were. Neither did she. And we didn't know if they would come at us or they were just going to chill or run away. But they actually didn't run away when they heard us, which was super weird, which got us a little freaked out. And we also saw a snake on this too. It totally blended in with the rocks. I don't know what kind of snake it was because when Maddie saw it, I saw it too, and she wanted to run, and I told her, no, don't run, because all my years in Girl Scouts taught us if you see a snake, you just need to walk away calmly, because if you run, it's going to think you're prey. It's going to think you're a mice or some shit, and it's going to attack you because these things can't really see. So you're welcome for that life hack for whenever you're in the desert and you see a snake, just don't run. Just be chill. Be calm. I'm actually proud of myself for being calm and not running. And then Maddie did the same because I did it, and we were fine. We didn't get bit by the snake. And honestly, we wish we would have got a picture of it or something so we could figure out which one it was. But too late now. So, anyways, yes, that is what I've been up to. That is where I've been, and I've missed you guys. I got a little behind as usual, but you guys, I'm here. I come back around. So, thanks for your patience. I always appreciate it. Okay, if you tuned into the last episode release, did you do some homework and start reading Boundaries by Henry Cloud? If not, that is no biggie because by the end of this episode, you will be dying to read it. But today we're going to talk about how to have some difficult conversations with those that we love about the boundaries that we need for ourselves. Yes. First of all, what the heck are boundaries? I didn't really learn what boundaries were until probably 2019 when I sat down and started doing some extensive work with my therapist. But according to roadtogrowthcounseling.com, boundaries protect your personal self by setting a clear line between what is me and what is not me. A lack of boundaries opens the door for others to determine your thoughts, feelings, and needs. Defining boundaries is a process of determining what behavior you will accept from others and what you will not. Ooh, all right. So there are two types of boundaries: emotional and physical. And we're going to really focus on emotional boundaries today, the quote, invisible ones that you can't see, but that are seriously so fucking important, y'all. So important. And I'm going to explain why they are so important. But first, what are we actually talking about here? Let's get a little more clarity. RoadToGrowthCounseling.com says that emotional boundaries involve separating your feelings from another's feelings. Violations include taking responsibility for another's feelings, letting another person's feelings dictate your own, sacrificing your own needs to please someone else, blaming others for your problems, and accepting responsibility for their problems. Strong boundaries protect your self esteem and your identity as an individual with the right to make your own choices. Whoa. So let's dig a little deeper into that. And let's use some examples from my life before I learned about boundaries and started setting them. All right, so here's a good example. So, someone once close to me would love to say phrases like, "You made me do that." First of all, that is not possible. Nobody can force you to do anything, period. You choose to do things for yourself. You choose what you put in your mouth when you eat every day. You choose whether or not to drink that second or third or fourth beer. You choose whether or not to exercise every day. You wake up and you choose whether or not to go to work today. Everything you do in life is the sum of your choices, and nobody else can make any choices for you. So when someone says, "You made me do that," that is a classic example of somebody without boundaries, not accepting their responsibility for their actions. And on top of that, they are trying to blame somebody else for their problems. So, what was the result when this person would say shit like that to me? Well, I would typically feel really bad about whatever I did because I felt like it was my fault that they did whatever terrible thing or not nice thing they did because they blamed me for it. And what that did was let somebody else's feelings dictate my own feelings. Not okay. That is not okay. We are all individual human beings. We have the right to ourselves. And that right there is an example of actually how one thing is three problems. if you see, because it's problems on both ends of the spectrum there. Boundaryless Bailey with another boundaryless person in my life back in the day. And another big one, oh man, and I feel like there's other people who have definitely gone through something very, very similar to this before. But a big one that happened with me was I went on a trip that somebody else had planned entirely, and I didn't have much to do on the agenda. Like I didn't get to plan anything, and I went anyways just to quote make the other person happy. Y'all, that was the worst situation to where I could have been and not had any boundaries. Because let me just tell you how this trip ended, or how this trip even went, first of all, and then how it ended. The person in question, they invited me on this trip and they said the trip was going to be for me, but in reality, it wasn't because I didn't get to make any decisions. I didn't get to pick where we actually went. I didn't get to pick the hotels that we stayed at. I only got to pick where we ate because I had Yelp on my phone so I could do the research. I didn't really get to pick any of the activities we did. I didn't really get to make any fucking decisions, which I am very independent, so that was already a massive problem for me right there. But then it got worse because when I started to speak up about not wanting to do certain things, the other individual was not happy because, I mean, they planned the trip, they had their own agenda, and they were expecting me to follow it, which was not fair for me, and that was not fair for them to do that. You can't you can't plan an entire trip and expect somebody else to just go along with all of it and have zero say in what is happening. So the trip ended badly. The person that I went on this trip with was actually a family member. And it ended with me becoming so frustrated because I didn't get to choose anything. I didn't have any time to myself. I mean, it was just not a fun situation to be a part of. And it ended with me being so frustrated that I literally told the person, I will never go on a trip with you ever again. And I mean, I kept my word to that because it's still true to this day. But guys, this was an example of sacrificing my own needs in order to please someone else. People pleasing, y'all. That was people pleasing. And people pleasing is so detrimental. It is. Because if you get in the habit of just doing things in order to please others, when are you going to take time to take care of yourself, huh? When are you going to do the things that you need to do to make sure that your cup is full? Because you can't give from your cup if your cup is empty. You have to fill yours first. And there's nothing at all selfish about that. So please remember that, please. Man, and I'm telling you, you got to read Boundaries by Henry Cloud because he uses so many more examples and he'll like put fake names in there. So that's really nice. So, like, it's a lot easier to kind of like picture what's happening. But you got to read it because he uses workplace examples, he uses husband and wife marriage examples, he uses family examples. Like, it's a really, really awesome book to get a good perspective on how you might not have been setting boundaries where you actually need to. And it was eye opening to me. I learned a lot while reading that book. I actually let go of some friendships while reading that book because I realized they weren't serving me. And if something's not serving me and it's not a two-way street, it's not worth keeping around in your life. So you got to read the damn book, I'm telling you. But for right now, what can we do about these issues? How do we set boundaries with people that we love? And most importantly, how do we bring up these conversations about boundaries with others? Well, damn, that was a lot of questions. So let's just take this slow, like a crock pot, cooking dinner, and hit one question at a time. Okay, so what do we do about these issues? Dude, first of all, I'm gonna go back and just say, read the book by Henry Cloud. Read it. I'm gonna say that 50 more times so it drills into your head and you go read it. And you know what's really cool is they had it at the Houston Public Library, which means you can read it for free. Because if they have it there, they should probably have it at other libraries too. I could be wrong, but anyways, check it out. Another thing that is really, really helpful is either finding some kind of support group if you're able to, or at least one other person who can be there for you as you begin your journey of owning your own emotions and setting boundaries with others. This can be really tough at first. Trust me from experience. I'm sitting in my closet raising my hand right now. And I'm so thankful that I had my therapist there for me. So if you don't have anybody else, dude, start seeing a therapist and work this through with them because they're 100% going to back you on this because boundaries are so important for a healthy mental being. Mental being, you know what I mean? Like for a healthy mental health. That sounds very redundant. Anyways, but this is a very tough process at first. Trust me from experience. When you set boundaries and you didn't have them before, you're going to piss some people off. You are. And you're going to have to learn how to navigate those relationships. And the best way to do it, honestly, I would say, is to talk to your therapist or to find a therapist or add in a support group as well with people who are a little bit further beyond than where you currently are because you're going to need some guidance. It's going to be tough. It's going to suck. But guys, I'm telling you, it's going to be worth it. Trust me from experience. It's worth it. And then another thing is learn to say no. Learn how to say no. I used to be a people pleaser and I would just be yes, yes, yes. I would just do whatever people asked of me. And guys, it is exhausting. If you have been there or if you are there, you would know how exhausting that is. So I'm just going to leave you with an article in the show notes from Very Well Mind, and it's going to teach you how to say no. So once again, I'm going to reiterate that that is a very important skill to master, the art of saying no. And more people should really learn how to do it. So check out this article in the show notes at whatishaybellsdoing.com and get yourself some skills. All right, next, how do we set boundaries with people that we love? So there are two ways. The first way is that you can just sit down and talk to them about it, which we'll get into a little bit more in just a second. And then the other way is that you can give yourself some distance from some boundaryless people who aren't willing or capable of respecting your boundaries. The latter one can be very difficult at times, but also simultaneously relieving. You know, I just said a couple minutes ago when I was reading the Boundaries book that I let go of some friendships because I realized it was a one-way street. I was just always there for them and they weren't there for me. So that's not healthy. That's not a friendship. That's somebody who's using you because they see that you'll always be there for them, but they decide to never be there for you. That's not okay, guys. That is not okay. That is not a friendship, and you don't need that in your life. You don't. So just remember, guys, that you have to do whatever you need to do in order to protect yourself. And choosing not to do something when somebody wants you to do something is not at all selfish. It's actually very selfish of the other person to be upset if you're not willing to do as they wish. Do you see how that is? And I know it can be difficult because I used to feel guilty all the time when I first started saying no to people. And it can be scary, it can be taxing, it can be exhausting. And the scary part is because, you know, I had some friends who I had been friends with for so long that I genuinely thought they were my friend. And I realized one day that they weren't because they were never there for me. So when I started saying no, at first I didn't have many other friends. So I was afraid I was going to lose all my friends. But then I realized when I said no to the people who weren't there to support me, who weren't here to help me, who weren't here for me, it opened up a door for all of these other people to flood in who are here to help me and support me and to be there for me. Because personally, I've always been there for others. I've always been the one that people know that they can rely on. I show up. I am there to help. I am there to listen. I'm there for you. And when you're that person for everybody else, but nobody is that for you, it fucking sucks. It does. And you don't deserve that. You don't. Because there are plenty, plenty, plenty of other fish in the sea out there who are willing to reciprocate that same kind of love and care and support right back to you the way you do it to them. So find those fish. Those are your fish. And those are the fish you need to swim with. And the other fish, just let those fish get eaten by sharks because that's where they need to go. Oh, man. Okay. Sorry. That got a little silly and probably a little weird, but whatever. Here we are. So lastly, how do we bring up these conversations about boundaries? So some of the boundaries that we need to put in is, first of all, saying no and preserving time for self-care. So that's one of the boundaries that we all need to focus on. We need to stop taking on too much and stop feeling overwhelmed, and that is completely in our own hands. Another thing that we can do is stop letting people interrupt your sleep, goddammit. Like, oh man, that one drives me insane. I started putting my phone on Do Not Disturb when I went to sleep a couple years ago. And y'all, that is life-changing. I get the best sleep now because my phone is on Do Not Disturb from 10 p.m. until 5 a.m. when I wake up. So if you try to call me or text me during those hours, you're not going to be able to reach me and I'm not going to be bothered. My Apple Watch is not going to buzz because it's on Do Not Disturb. I'm not going to be woken up in the middle of the night, and whatever it is, I can handle the next day if it's that important. And when I started doing that, I lost some friends, some quote friends, but I actually gained a lot of respect for my own boundaries by the new people who came into my life. My new friends understood, okay, well, she takes a long time to respond to text, but eventually she'll get around to it. And they also understood that I don't text between 10 and 5 a.m. I won't answer your phone calls. I'm sleeping, and you're not going to disturb that. They also understood that I don't go out and get drunk all the time on the weekends anymore. Like, that was my younger days. I'm not into that. And the people I surround myself with now aren't really into that either. Yeah, sure, some of them still are, but they know if they invite me out to do that kind of thing, I'm just going to be the sober person in the corner having a good time with my water, and they're not going to pressure me on it. You see? All right, that got a little off topic. Well, not really. Anyways, but how do we bring up these conversations about boundaries? Let's swing it back around to that. So the first thing that I highly recommend that you do that's been life-changing for me is that you come up with a plan on what you want to say to the person and you write it all out first. So my therapist actually recommended that I did that with, an old friend of mine and even with hard conversations with my boyfriend Monish. And I will tell you, that is seriously the best way to go about tough conversations. Because first of all, you can write everything down and you can do it a couple times. You can make a shitty first draft and then rewrite it because that sounded terrible and keep rewriting it until you get down exactly what you want to say. You can also soften your words. If you're like me, I am very rough, I am blunt, and I'm just straight to the point. I'm very direct, and I don't mean to be that way, but sometimes it comes off as not so nice, even though that's not at all the case. It's just who I am. So if I take time and write things out, I can soften my emotions, my feelings, my words. I can just soften it all. And also, if I'm sitting there and I'm reading this to them while I'm having a conversation, which I have done many times, guys. I've done that with friends. I've done that with Monish. If you sit down and you read everything to them and you tell them, like, hey, I have everything written down. I'm going to go over this with you because this is very important. Most of the time, they're going to respect it, number one, because they're like, wow, she took the time to sit down and gather her thoughts and figure out exactly how and what she wants to say. But also, it keeps you on track. It keeps you on topic and it helps you, like, if things swerve off, you get back and you get your point across. Because that's really what matters when you sit down and you have to tell somebody, hey, I don't have time for this. Or actually, that moves into the next part is when you do have these conversations with people, guys, another thing that you really need to do is focus on yourself during it. Always point the finger back to you. And consider using lots of phrases like, I need this time for myself. Or, I just don't have time in my schedule for this right now. Or, I'm not comfortable with this. Things like that. And just avoid using you phrases. And by you phrases, that means saying things like, I dislike when you do this. Or, you make me feel like XYZ when you say this. Or, you do this too much, yada, yada, yada. Because when you use those you phrases, you're putting blame on the other person. Whether or not you're meaning to do that, you are. So, a great thing with writing everything out before you sit down about these conversations is you can make sure that everything comes back to me. That you're using me's and I's and you point everything at you so that the other person can understand you're doing this for you. You're setting this boundary of this is me, this is who I am, and I am owning my emotions and my own feelings, and I don't have the capacity to take on yours too. Does that make sense? I hope that makes sense. Really, read the book, guys. Read the book. Also, another great thing that I learned, which is tough at first, but choose a later time. Do not try to discuss in the moment things if you're upset with the person. Give yourself some time to cool off. Give the other person some time to cool off, whatever, and come back to this at a later time when you can sit down after you've sorted all your thoughts out. That has made a world of difference on my relationships with other people, and I highly recommend you do it too. I have saved some relationships because I've just taken the time to sit down and focus and talk to them later instead of talking to them in the heat of the moment. And when you do have these tough conversations, do it in person or via FaceTime. You really, really want to be able to interact with the person's facial expressions and see their body language and vice versa. Because texting, guys, is the fucking worst. Stop doing that. I'm not kidding. Stop trying to have difficult or serious conversations over text. They don't understand your tone. I am such an expressive human being that I learned the hard way many years ago that texting can really fuck some things up because they'll take the tone and the way they read it, not how I'm actually expressing it. So when you're doing something like having a tough conversation with somebody, you really, really, really need to either do it in person or FaceTime if you can't in person. Because expressions and body language matter so much. Ugh, yes. And then lastly, guys, when you sit down and do something like this, it's really, really important to understand that the other person might not like what you have to say and just accept that it is okay for you to not please everyone. Remember, the only person you were born to make happy is yourself. Once again, the only person you were born to make happy is yourself. Okay? So read the book And next week, we're going to piggyback off today's episode and talk about loving people from afar. And you really don't want to miss that. You really don't. But before we start to wrap things up for today, it is time for What a Weirdo! And one of my weirdo things, which I really don't think this is super weird, I feel like so many more people do this that don't admit it, is that I do not sit on public toilets. I don't. I mean, all those squats that they make us do at Camp Gladiator turned out to be good for something because I can squat hold for longer than a minute, which is plenty of time to be able to pee on a public toilet and not have to actually sit on it. Like, it's great, y'all. It is great. And also, I go a step further. I throw away the first few sheets of toilet paper from the roll in public bathrooms because I am not using something that somebody else touched on my body. I am not doing that. That is just gross, and I'm not here for it. So I squat. Well, first I rip off those first few sheets and toss those in the toilet, and then I squat, and then I go and wash my hands and have a great day. Yeah. I know some of y'all, a lot of y'all actually probably do the same. And if you don't, then start doing Camp Gladiator or anything else where you do a lot of squats, and you'll get better at it, and you'll see that it is way, way better. Alrighty, guys. Well, thank you for tuning into the show as always. I appreciate you listening in, and I would really appreciate if you do your girl a favor and leave a review on Apple Podcasts. You can also hit the subscribe button on Apple, Spotify, Stitcher, whichever listening platform of your choosing that you prefer. And that way you'll keep updated with the latest episodes. Also, don't forget to head on over to distressed to joyful _Bailey's Way on Instagram. And we also have a Facebook group page as well where you can just keep updated with the latest information pertaining to the show. But until next time, take it easy, stay grateful, and be joyful. Bye!